All right. Late night from Willowdale. We haven't done a video in a long time. It's very appropriate we do one tonight. It was 50 years ago tonight that Neil Armstrong stepped on the lunar surface on July 20th, 1969. And a little 10:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A little over an hour ago. And it's appropriate, late night from Willowdale, because it's appropriate. Because I lived in Willowdale, and I saw it on our family's black and white television, as many of you did who are old enough, in our basement on Northwood Avenue in Willowdale in the Bayview and Steeles area. And I'll never forget it. And you know what? I guess that's the nice thing about age. You know, everyone wants to be young. But, you know, I grew up in a pretty exciting time. I was able to watch Neil Armstrong in live on a black and white television in Willowdale at 10:56 Eastern Standard Time, walk on the moon. And so, yeah, it means a lot to me. And I'm a space fan. And so I think it's important. And Clea and I have had these discussions about whether it's worth the money or not. But to me, when I saw the New York Times, every major paper in the world, well, except for the Globe, but I'll get to that later, has that on their front page. The Footsteps, the Financial Times.
The Footsteps that got blown in the wind too,
yeah,
right?
Financial Times of London.
There you go.
The Star. The New York Times did a great thing, though. They republished their famous headline.
Do you have the original of that?
I don't.
You don't, but
I
you
did
wish
have
you
the
did.
original Globe one. I gave it away. So.
Oh, okay.
Man walked on the moon, right?
Oh, that's like
Men
John's.
walked
Yeah,
on
okay.
moon.
Yeah.
That's a great headline.
Right.
That doesn't get much better than that.
Right.
And the Globe, the Globe was one of the few papers. The Globe Mail was one of the few papers that didn't have it. And the Globe is, the Globe is a declining paper, I think, in many ways. But that's another. But they did publish my friend Paul Taylor's interview with Douglas Brinkley, the great presidential historian, who wrote a book called Moonshot, and that was in today's Globe. Worth picking up, because Paul, in his interview with Douglas Brinkley, they discussed the fact that Lyndon Johnson's the forgotten president. Lyndon Johnson's the forgotten president. Kennedy started the thing with his famous speech, and yes, Kennedy believed in it, and he put money into it. But Johnson continued. Kennedy was very cynical, because Johnson really got into it. And Kennedy, he thought, Kennedy was pretty cynical. If it doesn't work out, Johnson will take the fall for it. But Johnson, after Kennedy was assassinated, said, no, we're going to continue to put money into space. It's very important, and he got the appropriations, and the result is Kennedy's dream of putting a man on the moon in
Before the
July
decade
of
was over.
'69 turned out to be true. Kennedy never saw it. Richard Nixon was there when man walked on the moon. The irony is Richard Nixon canceled the program after Apollo 13. Nixon was scared. He didn't want to lose any people in space. Apollo 13 kind of freaked him out, and the program got canceled. And my good buddy Gene Cernan was the last man to walk on the moon in December of 1972 on Apollo 17. He was the last man to walk on the moon. And you see my Facebook photos. I had the honor of meeting him. He even signed a little ticket.
Who are we looking at? Gene Cernan.
Gene Cernan's autograph.
There you go. And he's no, show it again. And he's dead now.
He died 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Apollo 17. Apollo 17.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a space fan, as everyone can tell. And
You're a space cadet.
I'm a space cadet. I've been lucky. I have been lucky to meet three men that walked on the lunar surface. I met Buzz Aldrin. He signed a book to me, and I know it's a bit of an ego thing, but
I
I'm
like
just a lucky
like
guy.
seeing.
I'm a lucky guy.
Right.
Buzz Aldrin wrote a novel. I met him at Indigo.
Right.
He's a nice guy. I patted his head. I didn't even know what to say to him. What do you say to the second man that walked on the lunar surface?
Ask them what
he
they did with
was
poop.
so friendly, and it was so nice. I met Charlie Duke, who, as everyone sees from the famous video, when Neil piloted the LEM down to the lunar surface, and everyone was freaking out because they didn't know they were going to make it. And Neil was very steely, right? Like, he took control, the abort bus, and all the master control buttons were going off, and they were thinking of aborting it. But, Neil said, screw that, we're going to the moon. Like, I'm this close. There's no way I'm coming back. We're this close. I'm landing this thing. And Neil had to steer it over craters and boulders because the original spot was not really good. And he put it down, and that famous line, the Eagle has landed, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. And Charlie Duke said, yeah, as Houston here, we copy you down. We're all turning blue down here. Yeah, Charlie Duke was in mission control the day, 50 years ago when Neil Armstrong put that on the moon with Charlie Duke at the controls and mission control. I met him. He was in Apollo 16. I did meet him, and he was a very nice guy. They're all nice guys. And I met Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon. And he passed away, as Clete said, he passed away a few years ago, so I was lucky. I met Dave Williams, who walked in space, space shuttle astronaut. Clete and I both met Roberta Bondar and Robert Thirsk. Both, it's great to meet these people. Space, the final frontier, right? The final frontier. Hey, let's look at
let's take a tour.
Let's take a tour. The Wright brothers. It all started in 1903 with the Wright brothers, and then the Saturn V with my Lego gantry.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the Enterprise.
Who tackled a lot of issues at the time.
Absolutely. And don't forget LEM and the modules and the space.
Right. The one that I ruined.
Yeah, the one you ruined.
I threw white paint all over it. And then that's the Enterprise, or who's that? Who's that?
There's the Soyuz. There's the Apollo 11 space capsule.
Right.
There's the LEM, and then there's the Enterprise. The Enterprise hovering over the Eiffel Towers.
Right. Look at that. That's pretty impressive, actually. It looks like I feel like I'm watching an episode.
Exactly. So space is important. Now, we are actually redoing this video because we've done. So let's not. Everyone watch Apollo coverage. It's amazing and great human endeavor. A lot of great stuff came out of, including the smartphone that Clete is taking this video on.
I hate smartphones.
That's
an interesting point, though. I hate to interject, but I mean, a lot of people hate smartphones.
Yeah.
Like Sam Harris hates smartphones.
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Everyone knows I still use old telephones. Look at my old phones here.
Right.
This is right out of the mission control space room.
Yeah.
And then there's my old World War II phone here, which still works. Oops.
Oh, you just broke something.
Yeah,
you broke. Okay, Andrew just broke something.
Yeah, it's okay.
He's getting him impassioned.
Yeah, there you go. Old technology still works. Okay, I have an old blacktop that I use. The technology I have in my apartment is the ones that put Apollo 11 on the moon.
Right.
The technology that Clete is using to do this video is,
oodles more.
There's more technology in his phone than put Apollo 11 and all the Soyuz missions and whatever. So, okay, so let's move from. Now there's a debate, right? And Clete says, there's a debate. It was 25 billion US. 25 billion US spent on the Apollo programs.
4% of
180 billion in today's dollars. And a lot of people say, well, that wasn't even at the time during the Vietnam War and all that. People were saying, really, is that worth the money? But it was worth the money. I think of all the advances in civilian technology and all of that. I think it was worth the money. Medical technology, advances in just civilian uses of technology and what we've learned about ourselves. And yes, and that out of that came all these other things, including what we have now is the International Space Station, which we're learning so much about the human world just being up in space. So yeah, I think it was worth it. Yes, it was a military mission. Apollo was a military mission. The Russians were beating the U.S. Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, was a Russian. It was a military mission.
What about the Russian
So
doggies?
get to the moon, beat the Soviets, and they did. And after Apollo died, after it was canceled, there was I remember in '75 there was a joint mission. There was Skylab, and then there was a joint Soviet American hookup in space in '75, and then the space shuttle program came. And if it wasn't for the space shuttles, we wouldn't have the International Space Station. And of course, great Canadian technology, the Canadarm and whatever. We wouldn't have Hubble if it wasn't for the space shuttle, the Hubble telescope, which has taught us so much about the universe. So yes,
Wasn't the U.S. kind of reticent about the ISS at some point? Like they thought that they should pull out of it. And the Chinese are now building a new space station.
The Indians are on the verge of going to the south side of the moon with a rover, and hopefully they succeed. Hopefully next week they get their thing off the ground. Yes, the other countries are exploring it. It's interesting that we now depend on the Russians to get us into space. Okay, this is Obama was not interested in space. I don't really know what Obama was interested in, but he was not interested in space. Obama's in many ways, talk about the forgotten president. He'll never be forgotten because he's the first African American president. So he has that in his he'll never. But he has, I think, what are his achievements really, other than Obamacare, openings to Cuba and to Iran to a certain extent, but really, I guess killing Bin Laden. But what are his real achievements? I don't know. Other than being the first African American president, which is of course historic and incredible, you kind of wonder. Obama let the space shuttle program die. It was already dying under George W. Bush, but the Americans for all the years have been left without their own vehicle to get into space. They depended on the Russians, ironically depending on these old Soyuz rockets. So yeah, went to battle with the Russians to get into space. Who beats who to the moon? And now we depend on the Russians to get into space. I was amazed that the Americans would let themselves defenseless in terms of they don't have a vehicle to get into space. They will with SpaceX and all this. With the next few years, that'll be rectified, maybe even this year. So, but that's interesting. Okay, so let's go on into infrastructure. Okay, because in the first video take, I was talking about infrastructure. Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, what the hell are we spending all this money on space? There's so many human needs, and it's true. But you can do both. The Americans spend $700 to $800 billion in the military, more than any other more than all the other countries in the world combined. Total waste. Do they need 10, 11 carrier groups really? To patrol the world's oceans. This is a country where their infrastructure is failing. The classic example is this in the Wall Street Journal last week. This is an article. Look at that. PG&E knew, but aging grid was a fire hazard. PG&E runs the power grids in California. They're 100 years old. They knew they were a fire risk. And what happened? They burst, wildfires, 85 people dead. That town of Paradise, California, eliminated. They knew they were a fire risk. These are aging power grids. Who would have known? California has 100-year-old power grids. Really? You think of California as being progressive and they're doing everything in alternative energy and all that. They have 100-year-old power grids. And this goes with the levees in New Orleans and the levees in the Midwest. The levees in the Midwest failed. There's all this flooding and all these rivers that flow into the Mississippi. New Orleans, the levees, they were worried about the levees last week with Tropical Storm Hurricane Barry, Tropical Hurricane and then Tropical Storm Barry. They held, but they were really worried because they're just not built that well. They're not spending the money on them. And this is with climate change, all these U.S. coastal cities from Miami all the way up the coast, California, they're not prepared for rising seawaters. They're not putting money into infrastructure. Okay, so in our first video, because I went on about the Dutch dikes, and Clete says, what do the dikes have to do with Apollo 11? Okay. After the Second World War, the Dutch, the Germans bombed the dikes. Holland was flooded. Horrible floods in the 50s. The Dutch rebuilt their whole dike system, and they call it the North Sea Protection Works, considered one of the great civil engineering projects of the planet Earth. And they spent billions of dollars shoring up Holland against the ravages of the North Sea. Amsterdam and Rotterdam live below sea level. Rotterdam is an extremely sophisticated network of opening up. The Rhine ends up flowing into the North Sea at Rotterdam. It's the mass on the wall, and they converge at Rotterdam, and they flow into the North Sea. And the Dutch have a very sophisticated way of opening up and closing down the North Sea. It costs you billions of dollars to do this, but the Dutch taxpayer think it's worth it. They don't want to see Amsterdam flooded or Rotterdam flooded. Rotterdam being a major port, this is important. You know what I mean? You got to spend money on this stuff, Americans. You don't want your levees bursting. You got to spend money. Stop spending it on tax cuts for the rich, and stop bloating your military with money they don't need. Okay, so talk about the military. Let's talk about.
So, could you just repeat that again? Like, what was the connection between the protection works and space travel? Like,
well, I think you can do. That's a good point. I'm glad you made that. I think you can do both. I think you can put money into astronomy, into space travel, and build the dikes, and build the highways, and upgrade your power grids. Just don't spend as much money on the military, which is wasteful spending. It's not needed. The Americans don't need to spend $800 billion on the military. There are no threats. There are no threats to America. And stop giving tax cuts to wealthy people who don't need them.
Okay, good.
Okay?
I get it.
So
Okay.
Build up. You can do, I see putting money into space as part of infrastructure. And science. And you can do both. You can put money into dikes, and you can put money into space.
Just take it away from the military.
Take it away from the military. They don't need it. And take it away and stop having tax cuts for wealthy people who don't need it.
Right.
And so that moves me into the segue of military and tensions. Okay. Iran, there's a lot of tensions with Iran. Okay, so and they just seized a British tanker. Okay. The United States pulled out of a nuclear deal with Iran, and this has escalated tensions. And then they waged economic warfare against Iran. Iran didn't deserve any of this, okay? They didn't deserve to be at war, have the United States wage economic warfare against them. They adhered to a nuclear agreement. They got sanctions relief. The Trump administration pulled out and then started waging economic war against Iran, and they didn't deserve it. So Iran is lashing back in this sort of minor ways that it can. Okay. I don't think Iran should. I think Iran should try to just show self-restraint, even though they are the victim, and they don't deserve to be victimized like the way they have been. But sometimes you have to, if the bully is a bully, sometimes you have to show restraint. And I don't know why Iran is taking it on the Brits. Yes, the Brits seized one of their vessels. Hopefully, the Brits have acted responsibly. Hopefully, they don't escalate. Hope the Iranians don't escalate, and they can resolve that. But okay, this is the deal. The United States is the bully. Okay, they're the most powerful economy in the world, the most powerful country in the world. Forget about China. The United States is still the most powerful country in the world, bar none. They have the most powerful economy. They have a huge internal economy of 350 million people. Generally, well-to-do. I get the unequal distributed wealth in the U.S., but they have a huge internal economy. So, and the dollar is the currency in international transaction. So the United States can weaponize their economy to hurt everybody, whether it's Canada, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Iran, whether it's China. They can do whatever they're the most powerful economy in the world. So they can wage economic warfare against countries without ever firing a bullet or a cruise missile. So that's what they're doing to Iran. And that's an extent what they sort of did with Canada and Mexico. They bullied us into signing this new NAFTA, which is just a tweak on the old agreement. And Mexico was very honest about it. It said, we need the United States. So we're going to swallow whatever crap we have to get an agreement. Because we need the United States. There's no doubt about it. Mexico needs the United States. And Canada does too. And so Trudeau swallowed the crap and we signed that readjusted NAFTA. Because Canada needs the United States. Mexico needs the United States. Most of the world needs the United States. That's why Europe is not doing a lot to help Iran, because nobody wants to lose access to the American market. And yeah, it's... So sometimes you have to cry uncle. Canada and Mexico cried uncle. And Iran has to cry uncle. As sad as it is, because they're a proud country, 5,000 years old.
What does it mean to cry uncle?
Say, okay, we're gonna try to negotiate with you, even though you don't deserve it. You don't deserve to talk to us because you're basically a bunch of assholes. Trump, you're an asshole. You treat us like dirt. You don't deserve it. But Iran is a diverse society, and a lot of people are saying, like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the crazy former president, this crazy guy, he is now saying we need to negotiate with the United States. And I think that's weird, because the crazy former president is now talking to the crazy American president. Those two are like kindred spirits, right? And others in Iran are saying we need to negotiate with the U.S. Iran has its own power centers. It's a diffuse place. It's a very diffuse place. It's not like North Korea, where you can deal with one thuggish dictator. There's no Kim Jong-un in Iran. It's a place of different power centers. The Revolutionary Guards, the traditional military, the religious establishment, and then you have the moderates like the foreign minister and the president, Rouhani, and a lot of people, all these different elements. So Iran is a more difficult place because it's more democratic. They actually have democratic elections in Iran. So it's a more vibrant and sophisticated society than North Korea. So, but there are a lot of people in Iran saying we have to cry uncle because we don't want to. We're starving. Okay, so we need to cry uncle, and they should see what the U.S. has done with North Korea. They're taking the pressure off. So, but Majed is right. Take the stop strangling us. Take your hands away from our throat, and maybe we'll start to talk, So I kind of hope that Ahmadinejad, nutty as crazy as he is, I hope that they talk. I hope the Americans get the message, and they start. I hope the two start to come together, and and I'm sorry to say it, but the U.S. is a powerful country, and sometimes you have to call uncle. It's terrible. I know. Iran has done nothing wrong, but they have no allies. Okay?
Well, they've done.
They have no.
Iran's done.
Of course, they do stupid things like seizing oil tankers and taking people hostage for no reason, and they're doing stupid, provocative things, which I think are dumb. Okay, they're lashing out like a child will lash out against their parents, but unfortunately, they can't afford to do anything dumb, because they have no power. Okay? Yes, they survive. They're a powerfully internally country. They can do. They're a very resilient place. But if they reach out, if Trump says reach out, talk to me, maybe they should take it and reach out and say, okay, we're gonna reach out. Even though you've treated us like dirt, you've absolutely treated us like dirt, you've humiliated us, we're gonna reach out, because unfortunately, they don't have a lot of options, Cleve. They have no allies. Okay, and
Iran has allies.
Just like Canada and Mexico had to
Russia is an ally.
Canada and Mexico had to swallow it and come to Trump's terms. No, Trump and China aren't real allies. They're false allies. Okay, everyone goes where the Americans.
Assad is an ally, but a diminished one.
Everyone goes where the Americans go. Yes, the world is changing. China's getting more powerful. Everything's changing, but the Americans still wield the stick, okay? So, this video has gone on longer than the original. Okay, so now let's go to, this is the last video you had to go to the bathroom. So we'll just wind up, because
Well, let's wind up with Ilhan Omar.
Yeah. So Ilhan Omar and the squad. Um, uh, I'm tired of the celebratization of these politicians. Okay, they just make these people out like they're just martyrs, and these are a newbie Congress people, and I just don't see the glow. I don't like why are people so excited about them? Why they get their nickname the Squad, and why are they on all the talk shows? And there's a celebrity culture in the U.S. that is weird, and I don't get it. And Trump's tweets and send them back and all that stuff. I mean, that's old material. Like, um, everyone knows Trump is a racist. Everyone knows he appeals to 30% of the United States, which are basically racist, and those people will vote for him no matter what, and no matter what Trump does, if Trump goes and defects to Russia and runs Washington out of the Kremlin, they'll still vote for him. Nothing Trump does will stir his base loves him. It's cultish. It's very Kim Jong-un like. They'll Zeke Heil. They'll send them back, lock her up, and all that. He's got 30% of the U.S. electorate locked up, and these people vote. Okay, they will go to the voting booth. The people who don't vote are all the lefties and all the, all the high-minded types. They don't even bother voting. They think, oh, it's below me to vote. You know what I mean? But voting matters. You want to get rid of Trump, you got to get and vote. You know what I mean? You got to make an effort to vote. So let me make a couple of points here. Yeah, I think the squad, those 4 women, I think they don't deserve the celebritization they've gotten. I don't know what their attraction is. Yeah, they've been victimized by Trump, but Trump's victimized so many people. So, yeah, I just find it all a bit much. It's Trump's presidency has shown that good 30% of the United States is racist. They do not like people of color, and that's clear. And Trump has shown that very clearly. So maybe that's an education for the Americans. 30% of your society is racist. They do not like people of color. Something you'll have to deal with, America. I often believe that the U.S. really never forget about the Voting Rights Act and the civil rights legislation in the 1960s. I don't think the U.S. ever came out of the Civil War. I think, in many ways, what did the Civil War solve in 1860? The Civil War of 1860 to 65 or whatever. And then
a very feminist take on the whole thing.
Yeah, what did and then there was Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and there is massive racism. Racism still exists today. They still haven't solved the problems of slavery and the Civil War in 2019. There are so many incidents in the United States every day of black people loitering in hotel lobbies on their cell phone and they get kicked out, or those guys at the Starbucks in Philadelphia that weren't doing anything wrong and the security was called. This goes on and on. And of course, all the incidents in people being pulled over by. But the one incident that says it all, and this is why we ended the last video really quickly because Clea had to go to the bathroom, was, and I think it's worth emphasizing, and a lot of you watching this will remember this was about 6 weeks ago. There was a black kid who was in the hospital, and he went for a walk with the permission of his doctors. This is a suburb of Chicago or somewhere in Illinois. And he had his portable IV machine. And he walked into the parking lot with his all hooked up with the
things in
his arm and everything. Yeah. And he just wanted some exercise. And he went with the approval of his doctors to walk in the parking lot and get some fresh air. Some security guard came out and said, "Oh, you're trying to steal the IV machine." I mean, really. And he was with he was a gay man too. He was with his boyfriend. And they called the police, and the police actually arrested the guy for trying to steal the IV machine. And he was just going to get some fresh air. Okay? And the hospital didn't even back him up. The hospital didn't even back him up, saying he had permission to take the IV machine into the parking lot. Really? Really? This is America 2019. Okay? You can't... be a black person and take your portable IV machine outside the hospital to get some fresh air into the parking lot when you're with your boyfriend, and you get some racist security guard who immediately calls the police, and the police don't care, they arrest you, and then the hospital doesn't even back you up.
But Andrew, really, how many people do you think are actually racist, as opposed to just living their lives in a way that?
Oh, I think a good chunk of those people. I think a good chunk of white America don't. They don't like this America.
But what about black people that have negative views of white people?
Well, I'm sure that's stupid. They don't have any power. Okay, they don't have the power to arrest white people. The power still.
Well, I'm saying there's the squad. That's some power, right?
They have power, somewhat power. They have media power, but they have media power. They don't have much more power than that, I think. The United States is still of white. I know you're saying there was a black president, there are black police chiefs, and there are black governors and black mayors. The United States is still a country where white people have power and they dominate. And I don't know if anything is. Things have changed since 1865, but sometimes you wonder how much.
I don't wonder. It's not something I wonder about. I'm sure there's issues of racism and discrimination that happens institutionally, but I also think that there's a status quo that favors people being racist on multiple levels. So black people being racist against white people and white people being racist against black people. And I feel like none of us are all that racist, but there's a propensity for everybody to feel racist. Like, I mean, I'm sure you have heard of like white guilt, and I've heard of like basically, black people and the way black people have been mistreated, like, but I feel a lot of the stuff like it's cyclical, like
Anyways, we go on and on about this topic, and Canada is not a perfect place by any means. We don't even have to even talk about Canada. It's not a perfect place. Lots of racism here. I just don't see it as institutionalized as in the United States. I'm not even in Western Europe.
Well, what about places like Harvard and Yale that basically deny Chinese people entrance because they need more colored people in their programs? Like, I mean, that's... Well, I find that affirmative action, right?
I find affirmative action and busing, that's a topic for another video. I in some ways, and that brings me to Biden. I don't think Biden needs to apologize for all of his past. Really apologize for everything. I don't think Biden is the person for 2020. I do agree with Trump. He's kind of Sleepy Joe, and I never understood the attraction of Biden. I never thought he was that bright. I always thought he was kind of a bumbling kind of idiot. And this is way before he was the vice president. But yeah,